Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Hope all is well. Today is another episode of Amazing DX Talks. So we have the privilege of speaking with Dr. Jane Thomason. She's an author, futurist, award-winning technology for social impact, a thought leader, and a social entrepreneur. I would like to welcome her directly because I'd really like to start the discussion as soon as possible. I met Dr. Jane multiple times, multiple regions, multiple locations, multiple events, or actually numerous events. So, welcome on board, Dr. Jane, to DX Talks.
Thanks, Rudy. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, finally we meet.
Absolutely.
uh, Dr. Jane, I would like you to introduce yourself if you don't mind. The best way is somebody to really introduce himself. So I would like to have the pleasure for you to introduce yourself.
Thanks so much, Rudy, and it's so great to be on your show. Well, just briefly for the audience, I've spent all my life trying to work on issues of social impact, but for the first 20 years of my life, I worked in healthcare, and then I discovered blockchain and digital technologies and AI and Metaverse and Web3, and I've become a passionate spokesperson for these technologies, helping people to understand why they matter and what they're going to do to enhance their lives in the futures. So I really see myself as an author and a speaker, but telling the stories of the future so people can understand them.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, we're going to be talking about also your books because they are numerous. So that's a wild contribution to the ecosystem itself. How do you really envision the role of this today Web3 technologies in shaping the future of digital interactions and transactions, knowing how things are moving in the world of Web3, regardless of the bull market uh, or not? So, what's your take on this?
Let me say, first of all, Web3 is coming, whether people like it or not. It's going to be the next iteration of the internet, and it's simply going to happen. So it's not a matter of whether people want it or they don't want it. It's coming, and people are going to realize its value. I'm particularly interested at the moment, however, with that intersection between Web3 and augmented and virtual reality, because I think it's in that combination of the world where we have the decentralized internet and we have the opportunity to participate and interact and engage in virtual spaces that the real transformations are going to take place. Now, how this is going to happen is going to be really interesting, because I think that what we're seeing is probably two parallel sets of things. One is in gaming, because I've always believed that that's going to be the pathway for the most rapid adoption of digital assets and Web3, because gamers are already 80% there. And the majority of gamers are in developing countries like Asia, and they're going to want the Web3 affordances. And on the second hand, what we're seeing is tremendous innovation in different sectors around Web3 and Metaverse. So whether it's health, education, government, tourism, the automotive industry, the aviation industry, industries are realizing that the combination of the augmented virtual realities, AI, and Web3 is going to transform their business. And we're going to see a lot more of that this year.
Yeah, I think this year is going to be very crucial and how it's going to be shaping this space in specific. Very interesting. Thank you for your intervention on this. As a thought leader in the metaverse, and I know you've been involved in the Metaverse Council and so many other things, can you share your insights on the current trends and potential impacts of various industries? What really excites you about the development in this space?
Yeah, no, thank you. It is that work that's going on in industries. And if I can start on an industry that I don't usually talk about, the automotive industry. I did a keynote at GITEX towards the end of last year about metaverse and mobility, what's going on in the automotive industry. And if you have a look at it, it's being used already for commerce, for sales, for collaborating with the community on design, for repair and maintenance, using digital twins of motor cars, using the motor car as a metaverse space, because if your car is self-driving, you've got to have something to do in the car. So the car becomes a metaverse auditorium theatre for you to do whatever you want. And what's more, we're seeing things, and maybe those of you who are in Dubai have seen those art cars, the wonderful pieces of art done by Vesa. Those are going to be made into NFTs, so that you buy a fancy car, you buy a work of art, and you buy an NFT that you can then go and race in a game. So we're seeing tremendous advances in the automotive industry, but also in travel and tourism, because this is where they can engage tourists, taking them into virtual tours of places they're thinking of going, but not only before the trip, afterwards, sharing with other travelers their experiences, and then bringing in Web3 and blockchain. They're going to be able to connect loyalty programs and customers and communities in ways that have never been possible before. So it's almost, no matter what industry you speak about, we're seeing tremendous advances being made. And my favorite industry, because I came from healthcare, is what's been done in healthcare. And if you look at some of the advances that are being used with the virtual augmented reality, helping surgeons in the operating room, you're never going to doubt this. So it's just so powerful and exciting. And every new industry that I research, I'm finding the use cases, and I'm finding that people are already figuring out how to use this.
Yeah, very interesting. What do you think about the opportunities in this Web3 in the current present businesses and individuals? How really can they leverage them effectively? Because there's a lot of, sometimes you hear there's a lot of hype, but there's no actual, where other times you do see a lot of projects that are giving opportunities in this space.
I mean, I think there's different ways that people can go about it. But I mean, let's just use an example. I was in Finland 3 days ago and meeting with one of the members of the World Metaverse Council, and they've designed digital augmented reality glasses that are very cheap and very light, that young people or anyone can assemble themselves at the value of about $20. So if you can create the infrastructure easier, cheaper for mass access, then that's a real opportunity. The second one is, as far as I see it, is it's sort of like metaverse as a service. If you can do digital twins, or if you can create immersive experiences and sell those to industries that are going to want it, then that's a business to be in. And then I think the other one is Web 2 brands in marketing have got to move to Web 3 and help. Sorry, not Web 2 brands, Web 2 marketing agencies need to learn about how to build communities in Web 3 and how to incentivize and reward them and how to keep them engaged, because that will be the future. So if you're in PR or marketing, you need to be learning about how to deliver services to people in Web 3. And then finally, never to forget the designer avatars. Avatar fashion is a thing, and so there's something that you can get involved in.
It is a thing, and I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it grow as we speak. So it's really interesting, indeed. And I have a couple of clients who are, traditional marketing or media companies, and then we're trying to help them into moving into the space, because a new mentality. And when you talk about the shift in the business model about community, this is where things change. So what really advice do you give those startups in this space, similarly to possibly also startups in the media and others, to really navigate in the evolving landscape of digital innovation, including Web3 and Metaverse?
Well, so I kind of advise at two different levels. I'm increasingly being asked to talk to the C-suite of big companies about how Metaverse and Web3 is going to impact on their business. And so that's kind of one level of the big changes that are taking place. The platformization, the fact that Gen Z and Gen Alpha are going to be your customers of the future, the fact that you can't just produce a product and give it to your customers, that this is a community who's going to want to be involved in creating and shaping the future of the product, maybe even investing in it, but certainly being engaged and rewarded for being part of your brand. So there's a whole lot of things to think about. And the other big thing that's happening, at the macro level is the realization of the telcos that they could be the infrastructure providers for Web3. So as we think about fintech, for example, we used to think about fintechs and banks. Now we think about fintechs, banks, and telcos. So that's at that level. At the level of the startups, it's really, you've got to find an idea that is going to happen that suits the business model. You've got to decide who your customers are, and you've got to provide something that they are going to want to have from you that can scale really quickly. And so, that takes a lot of imagination. But I just saw, recently a startup that's using, this is not so much Web3, but it's like, take these amazing ideas, using the kind of technology that's being used in dating apps, but using it for subletting of property. So you've got to kind of use your brain, think about new models, and then think about how you're going to be able to apply Web3. So let me give you an example. In travel and tourism, so you have these huge conglomerates, if you like, of membership organizations like Marriott Bonvoy and Accor and Hilton. They have millions of members. Go talk to them, help them understand how Web3 can really enhance their member engagement and experience. So you've got to kind of think about how you use the opportunities of Web3 and plug it into these companies that are going to need to want to use Web3.
Yeah, indeed. And this brings us to your story. You had successful uh, startups and companies, generating revenue of multi-million dollars. Tell us about that.
Well, look, I have to tell you, though, I was an accidental business person. I never really had an intention to start a business. But as I said to you in the beginning, I always had this desire to have an impact on the world in some way. And in the world that I lived in at the time, the way that you could get involved, in my case, in working in healthcare in emerging economies, was to bid for contracts that were provided by government contractors. So, like was AusAid, now DFAT, and others. And so I started bidding on contracts because I wanted to do the work. And to be honest with you, it took me a while before I realized I had a business, because I was just trying to do the work. But as it happened, I mean, it really was a fascinating experience, because we were good at what we did, and we grew. And we grew to the point that we really saturated the Australia Pacific Asia market. And then an American company wanted to acquire us to get that footprint. And that was when I really had the hair-raising ride from when we went from 50 million revenue to 250 million revenue in 3 years, which was like, really hold on to your hats, boys. But we did it, and it was an amazing experience, and I would never, I'm so glad I had it, but it was probably the toughest thing I've ever done. But then I walked away, because I wanted to follow this technology, because I think technology can be so transformative that I wanted to be part of that.
Indeed, I think I share with you the same thing. And this brings us to the digital future, which you mentioned earlier on. And how do you see that education is really playing a role, or should it play a role, preparing those individuals, those future youth for the advancements, or maybe not just the future youth, also the aging workforce?
Look, I think absolutely the future youth, and I think this has got a large amount to do with the way they're educated, what they're taught in schools, what they're prepared for, because they need the skills, but they also need the resilience to deal with multiple changes, which is what's going to happen in their life, because as new technologies end some jobs, they'll open new jobs, and they're going to need to be retrained and retrained. So they need to be ready for that. I think in terms of older generations, what we need to do to get them engaged is not so much education, it's give them something that solves a problem that they've got. So, if you're elderly and it's really hard for you to get a bus or get in the car to go see the doctor to get your prescription, and it's possible to go into the metaverse and to a meta pharmacy and talk to a pharmacist and discuss what you need, and then have the real pharmaceutical sent to your house, you're going to do that. So we need to think about how do we make it easy to service people using these new technologies. But in terms of education, where the education is really needed, I think that's around government and heads of the big industries that are going to be impacted by these changes. So government needs to be educated both to understand and appreciate the opportunities, but also to understand the risks, whether they're ethical risks or regulatory risks, and to be prepared for it, and to be prepared with the right skill sets accessible to them to help them navigate that. And then industries, they need to know. And if you look at banking and finance, that's an industry that's already being significantly disrupted and will be forever changed. So if you're on the board of a bank, you need to understand this. You need to think about how your business model will change, because the big techs and the fintechs and now the telcos are all coming for your business. So that's where education is really important.
And the demand, most importantly, from the not just Gen Z, Gen Alpha, they're changing, and then they're forcing us to play a different game. I think it's very interesting.
Absolutely.
You mentioned, venturing into technology. You mentioned changing a little bit of, a social impact. What really inspired you also to become that thought leader? And then I'm sure your perspective have evolved over the years in this special ever-changing landscape. Yesterday we had blockchain, today we have AI, and tomorrow we have something else, soon quantum computing, and what's your take on this?
Well, when I started was blockchain, but I started with blockchain not because of making money or crypto or anything like that. I started with blockchain because I could see how it could have an impact in terms of social utility. So my first eureka moment about blockchain was in humanitarian emergency, because if you think about humanitarian emergency, and we see it, in Venezuela, we saw it in Afghanistan, we saw it in Lebanon. When there's a crisis, people need money and they need to get out. And that's one example of where blockchain can really help, because you can immediately send digital assets to people to help them get out. But it also can, if it's linked to a biometric, if there's a flood or if there's a fire or if there's a military unrest, then they're going to be able to reconnect with their bank records, with their healthcare records, with their educational certificates, if they're all linked with blockchain somewhere safely with a biometric. So if you're a Syrian refugee fleeing Syria, when you get to Germany or wherever it is you are, you can quickly reconnect with who you are, because this is half the problem in the refugee camps. People are there for decades trying to prove who they are. So that takes away that issue around identity and certification. So that was the first thing that really got me interested. But like I said with Metaverse, once you start thinking about it, you can see the benefits, whether it's in medical supply chain, or whether it's in financial inclusion, or then moving on to AI and Metaverse and decentralized finance. All of these things have social applications. And what we need is for both companies and governments and human beings to think about, let's not fight AI. We understand AI is good and bad, but it's going to be of tremendous support in healthcare, in education, in industries where we're short of skilled people, and we're going to be able to automate certain things and give them the time to be able to do the things they're skilled in. So I think the way I approach it is, as these new technologies come along, to really try and think about how this can be used in a positive way for humanity, but also what are the obstacles we have to overcome? What are the kind of ethical and regulatory challenges we're going to face? But it's like fire. When our ancestors got fire, it was incredibly exciting and dangerous, but it had so much potential for good for mankind. And that's what technology is. It's our new fire.
Indeed, it is a new fire, a new discovery after maybe 40, 50,000. Um, you've been an author for a while. Can you share some insights from your books and how they contribute to this ever evolving Web3, metaverse, and digital future? Also, any books or upcoming books you're working on?
Well, my next one, upcoming one, is on Metaverse, but I just did a really super simple one on Metaverse, which is only $5.99 on Amazon, because I just wanted people to be able to understand it, because I hear so much rubbish being spoken about Metaverse, normally parroting Mark Zuckerberg, but just so people can
Uh,
actually understand what it is and why it is going to be an important technology. But the reason that I started writing, which is really to your question, was, first of all, when I write, I have to understand it. If I'm talking about it, I can probably embellish it a bit and it sounds good and you think I know what I'm talking about. But if I write about it, I have to know what I'm talking about. So first, it was a discipline for me to make sure that my thinking was straight. But second, it was what I discovered was when I was starting to think about social impact and think about healthcare and humanitarian and cities and so forth, a lot of people, it just hadn't dawned on them that this was a possibility. So I wrote it from an educational perspective, so that if someone said, I don't understand why blockchain's relevant to healthcare, I can say, look, let me send you this because I wrote about it and you can see what the possibilities are. So always when I write to try and enlighten people about the possibilities. So I finished recently a book on Web3s, the same idea, so people could understand what it is, because we use so much jargon and it's so confusing, and just make it understandable for the average person. Yes, so the next one's going to be all about the metaverse, but looking at the chapters are going to be industry focused. So if you want
okay.
to say, how does this help manufacturing or education or healthcare or
Okay.
tourism, etc.,
Interesting.
then we're going to bring them the examples and the use cases so people can understand about it. But it's all about adding to understanding.
Very interesting. And I love the industry part where, it I think it changes the perception of the book. So it doesn't always, what is metaverse without going into the specifics. And thank you for mentioning Meta, because in my belief, Meta has hijacked the name also, and it hijacked the whole thing. And now, as you can see, it's also shifting away. Possibly we'll see another name change and another type of disaster. But things are kind of shaping. I think Apple is possibly gonna be playing a role similarly to the goggles that they released, and they opened the purchasing of them, and then they sold, I think, $500 million immediately. So this is as a pre-purchase. We're not sure again, because what we saw is something versus the actual reality, and then where will this bring us, and what's really metaverse. We're still there today, trying to discuss. I've been with Meta engineers and Google engineers and others. They don't know today what is the future of Meta or the metaverse, because this is today. Where are we going? Where are we? Let's wait and see if this is going to be more defined in the future. And this is where,
I just
yeah,
want to make a comment, because I feel like people really waste their time talking about what is metaverse. So first of all, ITU, International Telecommunications Union, just did a pretty good definition. If people want to read it, that's probably the gold standard. But we're talking about, an immersive digital experience, which is facilitated by AR, VR, XR. It's always on, and we can do a whole lot of things there. So we don't need to confine it. It might be Web3, it might not be Web3, but it's really how we as humans can use these immersive experiences to enhance our lives and to provide better services. So I get a bit impatient with let's define metaverse. Let's not define metaverse. We know enough broadly about it. Let's go and see how people are using it. And later on, we can categorize it into, 19 different categories and subcategories. But right now, it's this amazing technology which allows immersive experiences combined with AI, combined with blockchain, combined with IoT, and maybe NFTs. And it's going to help us do a whole lot of amazing things. So I'm pretty comfortable with that. And I want to tell you the story about the amazing things, not care litigate about the definition.
Indeed, indeed. I couldn't agree more. Uh, but I wonder, really, how do you do it? You're an entrepreneur, you're an author, you're a thought leader. You keep on, speaking about the subject. How do you maintain a multifaceted professional life? It's not easy, I know, but what's the secret? What's that you have?
Just think you have to maintain your passion and your inspiration and your belief that every one of us can somehow drive a small change in the future in some way. And it's a matter of finding your way. And my way seems to be talking about it, writing about it, inspiring people about it. So as long as I'm breathing, I want to keep doing that. And what I see is as I travel around the world and I share my stories and I make people excited and I see what they're doing and I give them encouragement because, a lot of these people are working by themselves and no one's ever looking at what they're doing and saying, that's fantastic, keep doing it, just keep working with what you're doing. And I get a lot of just satisfaction out of meeting with people and seeing what they're doing and sharing my stories and learning from them. It's amazing. And we live in one of the most incredible times that I've ever lived in. And I'm so thrilled to be part of it and so humbled to be in a position to be able to learn and share with people.
Indeed, I think we are in an exquisite time, if I want to say. Uh, can you share any upcoming projects or initiative you're really excited about in the space of Web3, Metaverse, or those amazing digital disruption and digital innovation?
Well, there's always lots of things going on, but right now here in Istanbul, I'm working with some wonderful colleagues on a Metaverse Academy because what I think is that with all of the digital technology, people need to be reskilled and reskilled and reskilled. And I think the metaverse is the perfect place for really short, focused, data-driven reskilling programs. So we're working on that idea at the moment. But there's lots of other things going on that are exciting as well. And I hope to unearth a lot of them during this year.
Yeah, yeah. Well, as you mentioned, you're in Turkey. We are preparing. I'm involved in the first Metaverse summit in Saudi that's happening in September. I'll be definitely giving you a call about this. So it's happening on in September, early September 10th. Um, because we see that there's a growth in the region. So hopefully we can try to do an impact also in the local economies and regional big economies. And we see how this can open opportunities also to the regional players. This is very important.
Oh, I think there's so much possibility for the regional players. And the beautiful thing about the Middle East is that the governments are not afraid to lean in and back these new technologies. And they don't have the legacy systems that maybe some of the older, more older economies have. And so they can see, let's lean in. We can really transform our worlds very quickly. And I love their boldness. And I think that that's an opportunity to be able to work with them. Indeed, the Saudis, I was in Davos and the NEOM had a very big shop front in Davos and they were sharing what they were doing. And, if there's a place where pretty incredible things could be done, then it's certainly Saudi. And yeah, please send me the dates of that conference. I'd love to be there. And I'm working with the Gaming and Immersive Technologies Institute at the Science and Technology University as well. And so there's lots of exciting things going on there.
Very interesting. Any last words before we end this episode?
Look, I think we started off saying we think 2024 is going to be a great year. I think that we're going to be seeing some tremendous advancements that help people see why Web3 and Metaverse are going to be incredibly important to the future. And we need to see those and we need to share them. And thanks for having me on your program. And you have an opportunity to be able to unveil many of these exciting projects that are going on and share with your listeners what's going on and help open their minds to the possibilities of this incredible future. But you're sitting in the middle of the Middle East and there's lots of exciting things going on there, so it's a great time to be there and it's a great time to be part of that community.
Indeed, indeed. And that's what we're trying to do, give back to that community and let them be heard and preach and do the awareness part, because we see that there's a key element that's still it's an infancy, so we really need to grow it. Dr. Jane, it was really amazing having you here with us on this episode. This is the kickoff of our season 9, so that's the first episode of season 9. uh, we're gonna be super happy once it's released, and then we'll definitely have you more, and then we'll be talking much more than beyond this platform. I'd like to wish you a great week ahead. Keep on aspiring us and inspiring us in both cases, because what you're doing is really amazing. So I'd like to wish you all the best.
And thanks for what you do. It's been great to be on your program. Bye
Yeah,
bye.
thank you. So with that, we end in a very exciting episode with Dr. Jane. Amazing insights. Big thanks to you, our viewers, for tuning in. You can watch the recording of this episode on YouTube again and all of our channels. So with that, stay tuned until next time.